Hey, this is Andy Powell of Wishbone Ash, and you're listening to the Total Kit Car on YouTube.
Hi, my name's Steve Holt, editor of TKC Mag and totalkitcar.com. Welcome along to the Total Kit Car YouTube channel for another episode in our History File series. Two things are given in these videos, I think. One is I'm going to nag at people that haven't subscribed, and still, even though it's gone up a little bit, at the time of recording this in late September 2025, still less than 30% of people that listen to these videos or tune into these videos actually subscribe. Won't cost you a penny. We'd appreciate it greatly. It really does help the channel. And if you hit the subscribe button and make sure you also hit the all when you get the little drop down menu, then you'll be notified every time I upload a new video, which I'm trying to do every Tuesday or for every Tuesday evening. It's not a given either, really, because life gets in the way sometimes, but I am trying to do that. If you could also hit the thumbs up, that also helps us. I haven't even think I'm nagging now about subscriptions. Wait until I look properly at this new thing that YouTube have introduced for channels, which is about membership. Goodness me, I believe that helps our algorithm a bit, and I haven't even started looking at that yet. So I'll try and keep that away from you as long as possible. But anyway, let's get straight in. I always say the other given thing is that I've got an interesting video for you. I have as well this time. We, as you know, if you're newcomers to the channel and it's appeared in your feed and you're actually looking for a cooking channel, Al's Kitchen for curries is fantastic, by the way. Big up, Al. That's an aside, sorry. So if you're looking for something else and this one appeared in your feed, then do stick with us. In a nutshell, we cover the great, the good, the quirky, and the fantastic designers and personalities that have graced the UK's kit car industry since 1949. Indeed, we're having a good go at it. We're over 100 videos now, and we're going to carry on adding to that list. So today we got it was loosely intended to be a look at the Nymph, the wonderful little Hillman Imp based kit car from the mid-70s, but that car's got quite a backstory, as have the two protagonists that created it. It's really worth looking at the history of those two guys. Robin Stables described himself as an industrial engineer, and Peter Bohanna, who described himself as an industrial designer. They were both engineers, really, and they were both met at Lola, but we're going to talk about that. Let's look at Robin Stables first of all. He'd served in the army. I don't know in which regiment, and I don't know to what rank. But after he left the army, he enrolled at the Chelsea College of Aero Automotive Design and Engineering. Flows off the tongue, which was a serious operation that was associated with the Brooklyn School of Flying, I believe. And it was based in Sydney Street in Chelsea. He then, when he graduated from there, he worked as a Ferrari mechanic for Colonel Ronnie Hoare, who created Maranello Concessionaires, of course. In 1966, he spread his wings and he went off to work for an engine tuning company of unknown name in Lausanne in Switzerland. They specialised, this is where it gets quite key really, specialised in Hillman Imps and also Lotus. And while there, one little side there, while he was there, he maintained actress Anita Ekberg. I think her most famous film was La Dolce Vita. She had a Ferrari, I don't know which model, but he was charged with looking after that and maintaining it for her. It said that he got bored and he worked as a crew chief for a Swedish driver who was actually quite a good standard, a guy called Ulf Norinder. And I think among his cars was a Lola D270 perhaps. And he worked for him for a while as crew chief. Meanwhile, Peter Bohanna, he had quite a pedigree as well. Now he was a technical illustrator and he'd worked at Ford Advanced Vehicles, created the clay models for what became the Mirage GT40 project. And then notably, he went to work for Alan Mann Racing. And his first job there, I believe, was creating those flared GRP wings for the Alan Mann Racing Escort Mark 1, the very famous car. What some people don't realise is that Alan Mann Racing was also involved involved heavily in creating cars for TV and film use. And Peter Bohanna was part of the team that produced the cars for the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, put my teeth in film. And he also worked, I believe, Alan Man Racing did the stuff for Jerry Anderson's. I can't remember, forgive me if it was UFO or Space 1999 or both, but later Jerry Anderson Productions. Then he moved on to work for Lola in Huntingdon, of course, or Peterborough, I beg your pardon. He worked on several cars there, and that's where he met Rob Stables. He certainly worked on the T190, which was so they worked on, Bohanna worked definitely on the T190, the F5000 car from 1969, the T210 Group 6 2 litre 1970, and I think he had a hand in the T230 as well, which was the endurance sports car. May have even done a bit of Can-Am racing, that one, 1972. I may be wrong, so forgive me for that. He'd actually become self-employed in 1970, and he was working on projects for likes of Broadspeed and British Vita, the Vitamin Racing operation, minis. I think Stables, as I say, was at Lola as well, but he'd also, I think when he actually met Bohanna, he'd been working on what became a stillborn project. It never materialised, for Mike Spence. There's also, let's go into a little bit of background here as well, where it slightly goes off at a tangent, but it's still very relevant in terms of the later car, the Nymph, that we're going to be looking at. Peter Bohanna also had much input at Royale Racing Cars, and I believe, along with a guy called Mike Smith, under the boss of the design department there, also later Lola, a chap called Bob Marston. Along with Mike Smith, Peter Bohanna, 10 Royales, and they range from the first one was in 1970, the RP9, that was for Formula Super V. 26 of those were produced. He also did they also did the RP5 in 1971. There was, I think, 4 designs in 1971 for Royale. The RP5 designed, only one of those built. That was designed for John Webb's UK version of Formula Atlantic, which was actually Formula B. And they also did the RP12, a one-off Formula 5000 car. I do believe that ended up in a fireball. That was never proceeded with. RP14, another Super V car, 20 of those built. The RP15, a one-off F2 car. And then in 1973, they did the RP11A, Formula 3, a one-off. The RP18, a Super V car, I think they built 11 of those. 1974, they did the RP18A, another Super V, a variant of the RP18, of course, another 11. And then the biggest seller, probably arguably Royale's biggest seller, maybe. I need to check that, but I do believe that to be the case. 1975, the RP21, which is the Formula Ford 1600, a classic Formula Ford 1600 racer indeed. We also need to talk about, which came along before that, while they were both at Lola. They came up with what was the Diablo GT, which later became the AC 3000 ME, of course. But that was quite a notable project. They worked hard on it. They they designed it around a prototype. Sorry, I'm losing the thread here. Sorry, I do apologise. They unveiled the prototype at the racing car show in January 1972 at Olympia. It had come about years before that, 4 years before that, in fact, when an aristocrat called Piers Weld Forrester. As a man with another interesting history. He was then working or part of Universal Power Drives, which soon became UWF, which was Ernie Younger, Piers Weld Forrester. They took over Ernie had designed the Unipower GT, of course, but they took that project over and created a Mark II version. Indeed, Bohanna and Stables were actually commissioned to come up with a successor or a Mark II version of the Unipower GT in 1968, which was never proceeded with. That car had a 2.2 litre inline six-cylinder engine, BMC's new E-Series actually, and it codenamed ARO25. But that was delayed, and that project, that never amounted to anything really. But then they went off and did various other things that we've already described with Royale and such like, until 1972, when they revisited that idea. They had approached TVR and AC Cars with a view to selling the project to them. Both of the companies I just mentioned didn't want to proceed with it at that stage. By this time, the Diablo GT, as it became known, was powered by a 1.5 litre four-cylinder E-Series. I think the same spec as was used in the Austin Maxi, along with its 5-speed gearbox. After the show, they didn't give up with AC. A guy called Keith Judd, who I think was works manager at AC in Thames Ditton at that time, he was lent that car post-show, and he took it back to Thames Ditton to show Derek Hurlock, AC's boss at the time, with the idea that indeed AC did actually take it on in the end. They assigned two of their engineers, Alan Turner and Bill Wilson, and they worked alongside Rob Stables and Peter Bohanna to revise that car for AC to put it into production. Essex V6 replaced the E-Series BMC engine. It was unveiled a prototype. I think there was up to about 11 prototypes. The gestation period for that car was amazing. And we'll move away from that in a minute, because we do move away from Stables and Bohanna. But suffice to say, it didn't actually reach production, I don't think, until about 1978. But by this time, I get the impression that even though they became well known, they were incredibly well regarded for the quality of their work. And indeed, they traded for a time around about 72 as Bohanna Stables. They were an independent design studio or stroke house. And they came up with another idea, not undeterred, but I suppose they'd done all right out of, I hope that they did all right out of the AC deal. But I did subsequently read otherwise. It took them a long time to receive any recompense for that. But not to be deterred, they came up with what became the Nymph. Again, it was an independent project in terms of what they were going to do with it. They wanted to put it into serious production, and I'm guessing that they had the idea and the intention to try and flog the project to a mainstream manufacturer. Stables, going back to his late mid-60s dalliance in Switzerland, as I was intimated, had become familiar and fond of the Hillman Imp, and that seemed like the perfect car to which to base what I guess could be described as an updated of many cars around that time were perceived as being the successor to the Mini Moke. As it turned out, they did approach a couple of companies, and Chrysler UK liked it greatly. They could see that the car could be sold in markets such as well as UK, but they could see particular interest in places such as Jamaica and Barbados for the holiday rental market. They could see it being sold into the Far East and Africa. and they were quite excited about it by all accounts. They could see 4,000 units a year, and I think when they gave it the green light and agreed to supply the all brand new parts, I think it came about really because I believe that Stables and Bohanna approached Chrysler once they'd identified the Hillman Imp as being the donor for them. They approached Chrysler, who agreed to supply them brand new parts, as many as they wanted, then got interested in the possibilities of it becoming an official Chrysler UK project. They intended, Robin and Peter, they intended it to try and make it the lightest four-seater ever at that time, production car. And I guess at 425 kilos at that time, definitely they succeeded in that aim. There was talk about an initial order actually of 10,000 units, and all seemed set fair. It was an ingenious little thing. It was a GRP monocoque, and it used pretty much, apart from the body and such like, pretty much everything mechanical anyway from the Imp. And the idea being that the car, you unbolted apart from the Imp and you just bolted it straight onto the monocoque of the Nymph. A really good idea. That what seemed like snatching the defeat from the jaws of victory came when Chrysler UK, the Chrysler Corporation in the States, sorry, Chrysler UK, Chrysler Corporation in the US, decided to discontinue the Hillman Imp, and that kind of destroyed the Nymph project, or certainly the future prospects of it being a big seller and a mainstream car. And the success that would have brought Stables and Bohanna deserves success as well, I believe, given their abilities. Overnight, just destroyed it really. But they undeterred. They decided to continue with the project, and they decided to offer it as in kit form. That first donor, I think they paid 35 quid for it in September 1975. Their first demo car was in a very bright, very lurid green, which certainly made it stand out. They had an Essex boat building company, I think one that they were familiar with when they were doing their design stuff. Although I think they were let down by that company, and the bodies were said to be, or the initial bodies were said to be of poor quality. Then they went to a company they knew very, very well, Specialised Mouldings, Peter Jackson in Huntingdon, next door to Arch Motors, Motor and Engineering, of course, where they did a lot of Lola work. And I believe at least one of them, possibly Bohanna, was seconded from Lola, because Peter Wright was the kingpin of the aerodynamics there, the great F1 aerodynamicist, and the quality of GRP. They did a lot of racing car bodies at the time, and of course, if you're a specialist car manufacturer, your first port of call would always be Specialised Mouldings, and they went to them because of the quality of the work they produced. They knew them. And of course, they knew they worked for Lola, so therefore they knew everybody around the scene there. Really, it worked because Specialised Mouldings were not only doing the bodies for Lola, but they were doing the aerodynamics for them as well. And certainly, I think Peter Wright had a big hand in designing the T70 at Specialised Mouldings. I could be wrong, but I do believe that to be true. And then, of course, there was another kitcar connection, a guy called Jim Clark, not the legendary racing driver, but I guess a legendary glass fibre man who was later quite involved with the kit car industry. He worked with Jim Finch, and the Manx kit car, not the beach buggy, but yeah, Jim Clark was a very special GRP man, laminator. So the bodies were once they got specialised mouldings on the case, the bodies were very good, although some people did say that they were too heavy, and it certainly impinged on the 425 kilos that they were aiming for, but they were good quality. One of Stable's party tricks at shows was much like, I guess, a trick pioneered by Giles Smith of Gilburn slightly earlier, jumping up and down on the double skin body to prove its strength. They moved to a larger premises. It didn't last long because they were in trouble in as much as several customers were complaining that those early bodies that were made by the boat builder were too thin. So they were having a few production issues. So I think as a result, they moved back to Robin Stable's barn. And the kit price certainly had risen as a result of the troubles, I think, from £378 to a hefty increase to £632. Even though things were looking good, Peter Bohanna, I think, left in early 1977. Having worked with Alan Mann Racing in TV and film car work, I think that was in his blood to a certain extent. And he left to return to the film industry. I think he was also later part of a plan to cross the Atlantic in a hot air balloon. I don't know how that all ended really, but I do think he was mentioned as a part of that team. He worked on Wet Nelly, which was I don't think it was actually an amphibious Lotus Esprit, but it was the one that was in the James Bond film. The Spy Who Loved Me, the James Bond film, Roger Moore, was it 1976, 77? But anyway, he worked on the team that responsible for that. I think the Wet Nelly was at the sister car or the sister project to Little Nelly, which was the auto gyro, which featured in the earlier Bond film. Was it You Only Live Twice? I'm not actually an aficionado of James Bond films, but I think that's the case. It was named after. I do know that the Nelly name came from actress and comedian Nellie Wallace. I'm pretty certain of that. I think actually after that, Peter Bohanna actually left the automotive industry completely, and I think he moved to Marlow, and I think he became a water softener engineer, if I'm not mistaken. Meanwhile, Rob Stables continued on alone with the Nymph for a little while. Certainly losing Peter Bohanna was a knock, but they decided, I think they really were, and I've said this many times if you've heard some of these videos, lots of great cars have perished in the kit car industry because they were brilliantly produced and designed and produced by engineers who were much happier creating the projects, happier than selling them. They were not salespeople, and I think a lot of brilliant cars perished as a result of that. And I think the Nymph is one of those. But anyway, Rob decided to give it one big final push really. Orders had dried up a little bit, and he had one big push, a high profile appearance at the National Custom Car Show, Olympia, in January 19, I think that was in early 1977. Although it didn't run at all smoothly because his demo car was late turning up, which didn't help. But it did generate a bit of interest and a couple of orders. Although it was all over by April 1977, he'd pretty much given up. He couldn't quite get the car cracked. I guess by all in sort of with a fair wind behind him. I mean, that car should have been a Chrysler UK project. It certainly would have done well, I think. He brought the shutters down on his little workshop for the last time, I believe a week or so after he did that, what would have been a life-saving order for 25 nymphs fully built from a Barbadian hire car operator who'd already bought one and liked it, but decided to place an order for 25 that Robin Stables couldn't fulfill. And that's kind of a final sort of coup de grace, really, I suppose. Robin, as I mentioned, Bohanna ended his career, I think, in the water softener, as a water softener engineer. Robin was very successful, I believe, producing guttering for houses on a large scale. GRP, of course. I think that's what he ended his career doing. But when the score's on the doors and we look at the Nymph at the end of its short period in production, I think 42 were produced, mostly in kit form, plus of course the 25 that don't exist really, which came too late. By all accounts, they could have done more than that, but they moved on to other things, as we discovered. Notable, I guess, as well for the quality, latterly the quality of its GRP. It was said to be of fantastic quality. Bright colours were the order of the day for the Nymph, which made the car stand out even more. They were certainly, I think, or specialised mouldings were certainly one of the earliest pioneers, or users, I should say, I guess, not pioneers, users for, in automotive terms, for fire retardant resin, which of course was key for racing car use, which was their main bag, I suppose, undoubtedly. So the Nymph was laminated in a nice fire retardant GRP, one of the first in specialist cars to be manufactured from that product, I think. So there we have it. So I hope you've enjoyed the little story of the Nymph and the incredibly talented Bohanna and Stables. They were pretty successful, but they deserved to be much more successful than they were, I believe, as we found out. They had some real near misses there, stuff that deserved to make them their fortunes. But wherever you are in the world, whatever time of day it is, I thank you most graciously for giving us a chunk of your time today to listen to this humble little voiceover. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got this far, 27 minutes in, then and you haven't done it already, yes, I'm going to say it again. Please subscribe to the channel. Appreciate it greatly. Anyway, my name's Steve Holt. I bid you a great day. I'll see you later on down the road. Thanks very much for visiting. Bye.